Hey guys, it's me, Simple Programmer, and welcome back to the Java game programming series. And today we're going to get started with the framework of the game. So what I mean by framework is like entity handler and manager. So let's get started with it. Actually, before that, I have some adjustments to our window. When we're creating it, instead of just creating values like this, let's actually make them into variables. So let's make public static final integer. Final just means it can never be changed. Width is equal to 800. Height is equal to 600. There we go. And I'm also going to do it for a title. So public static final string title is equal to, just gonna copy and paste this, equal to game pre-alpha 0.01. You know, I think we've earned our game going up a stage to 0.02. So now let's replace these with their respected values. So title, width, and height. So there we go. Now if we run, we should see nothing has changed. Also, we ended off last time with just a red circle going across the screen like so. And today we're gonna be creating our first entity. So let's actually start doing our framework. So let's create a new package first of all for our framework. So com.simpleprogrammer.framework. So there we go. And I did not want the package info. I'm just going to delete that. And let's create a class. Call it GameObject. So new class GameObject. This is just going to be what each of our objects and entities are going to extend. And this is just going to define them basically. So let's just create some values first. So protected means only that things in the same package and classes that extend this class can use it. So protected x and y, that's just our x and y onto the screen. Sorry, protected float x and y, protected float velocity x, velocity y, how fast our object is going and which way it's going in the x and y coordinates, and protected ID. So let's make the class ID, but we're actually not making a class, so let's just go to our framework here. Instead of class, we're going to do new enum. Enum is just basically a list. We can use it to do ID stuff. You can go learn about it more in the Java docs. So I'm just going to call it ID. And here, I'm just going to make a couple IDs. I'm just going to do player, and just for now, we're just going to do player. And we're just going to do test, because that's what we're making today. We're just going to make a test object. So now let's actually make a constructor for it. Public game object float x, float y, and our ID. And we're just going to say this dot x is equal to x, this dot y is equal to y, and this dot id is equal to id. Basically, we're just saying this x and y and our id, we're setting it to this x, this y, and this id. So that's basically it. And when we extend our game object into when we are creating an object, we're going to have this constructor. So let's make a public we're actually making our first abstract method. Public abstract. Oh, by the way, up here, it's not just a public class game object. We're going to do abstract. And that means the methods that we do as abstract here, we're going to have them when we extend our game object. So public abstract void tick, a tick method for logic, public abstract void render for graphics, and inside the parameters we're going to have graphics G, Control Shift O to import that, drop it out the graphics, and a public abstract rectangle get bounds. This is just for our Control-Shift-O to import java.rectangle. This is just for collision, so we can make a collision bounds. And now we can just go to source, generate getters and setters for ID, velocity x, velocity y, x and y. Just so when we extend our game object, we want to change the x and y position or velocity x, velocity y, or ID in another class, we can do that. So there we go. And now that's basically it for our game object. Now actually going to create another class to handle the game object. So we're going to, in our framework still, we're going to do another class. We're just going to call it handler. And this is going to take all our entities and objects, and we can add entities, so we don't have to do new block blah blah blah. Just it will just be very time consuming to do that, so it's a much easier way. So public array list and in here we're gonna have game object excuse me, public array list game object. So we're making an array list of game objects, and we'll just call it object is equal to new array list with game object. There we go. Ooh, sorry, inside here, game object, and parentheses there we go. Control-Shift-O to import array list. And now we're just gonna have a tick and render method. So public void tick, and here we're gonna have something different. We're gonna have a for loop that's just gonna iterate over every single thing inside our array list. So we're gonna have for int I is equal to 0, I is less than it, object dot size, and then I plus plus. That just makes it so that it goes through every single object we have and does game object temp object is equal to object dot get I. So basically what it's saying, okay, we're making a temporary object of the type game object, and we're just setting it to this game object here, object.getI. So we're just going through every single object that we have and setting the temp object to that each time we do our for loop. So temp object dot tick. We're just doing our tick method for every single object. So that's about it for our tick method. Now, kind of the same thing in a render. It's public, actually exact same thing. So public, oh my god, I can't spell public. Public void render, and inside here graphics G. Control-Shift-O to import graphics, java.graphics, and we're just gonna do the same exact for loop for int I is equal to 0, I is less than object dot size, I plus plus. And we're just gonna do game object temp object is equal to object dot get I. There we go. And I'm just gonna do temp object dot render G. There we go. That's about it. Now let's actually make some methods. Public void add object. So we're adding an object, which is like basically adding an entity or a block or something like that. And then we're just gonna do this dot. In here we're gonna have some parameter game. We're gonna have a game object. Game object. So we're basically adding a game object. So we're just gonna do this dot object is equal this dot object dot add object. So we're just saying basically we're adding so for this object here we're adding a game object because we can do that because it's of the type game object. And we're just gonna do the same thing for remove object. I'm just gonna copy and paste because I'm lazy. Remove object, this dot object dot remove object. So yeah, that's about it. Now let's create a test entity. So I'm gonna actually have another new package, com.simple programmer.objects. And no, why do I always have this package info thing? Delete that. and I'm just gonna do new class. Just gonna call it test, and I'm gonna do extends game object. So there we go. Control-Shift-O to import game object, and we're gonna have an error here because we have to add a constructor test flow add flow I and ID, and we have to add our unimplemented methods. So there we go. Just remove this to do stuff, and so there we go. And in our render method, I'm just gonna have g dot fill rect. I'm just gonna do x and y, and our width I'm gonna do 25 by 25. X and y will be defined when we add an object, when we actually add the object. Right, we need to cast to x an int. Casting this makes it an integer basically, because we can't do that because it's a float, and this only takes integers. And then here, we won't worry about that right now. And I'm just gonna set the color g.set color dot, just let's set it to blue, and Control-Shift-O to import color. So now if we go to our game, we're actually gonna use our init method. So we're gonna do up here, we're gonna make an object of our handler. So private handler, and in our init, Control-Shift-O to import handler. Whoa, that's a lot of handlers. And our init method we call first thing in our run method, and we only ever call that once because we only need to initialize things once. So we're just gonna do handler is equal to new handler. There we go. Now we can use the methods within handler. And down here in our tick method, I'm just gonna remove this exjunk. Boom boom. And I'm just gonna do handler.tick. What that does, it just ticks every single entity we have. And I'm just gonna move this stuff as well. And I'm gonna do handler.render G. That just renders every single entity we have. So now if we actually create an entity, up here let's go to our init method. We have to make sure that when we add the object, it's after we initialize the handler, because if we do it before, handler dot add object, say that, we'll get an error because we actually haven't made handler yet. We'll get a null pointer. So let's do handler dot add object new test, and we're gonna get an error there because we have to import it, and because there are some parameters at x and y, I'm just gonna do at 50, 50, and id dot test. There we go. So now if we run our game, we should hopefully get a blue square at 50-50. There we go. So that's gonna be it for this episode. I'm just gonna remove this test stuff. I'm just gonna delete test. No, I'm not gonna delete it yet because I'll show you why next episode. And that's gonna be it for this episode. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Peace out, guys.